Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, Pyramid of Light. I really don't know what to say about this one, at least not that hasn't already been said. It looks really nice. It expands the lore a little bit, I guess. But unlike almost everything else related to Yu-Gi-Oh!, this was made first in America, and so isn't even considered canon amongst the filler stuff from the original anime. It takes place almost immediately after Yugi wins the Battle City tournament against Merrick, and primarily deals with Kaiba trying to learn how to defeat Yugi's 3 Egyptian god monsters. Monsters that are difficult to summon for anyone who isn't a main character, but make up for that by being virtually immune to anything you can throw at them once they're on the field. Even his Blue Eyes Ultimate Dragon isn't strong enough to defeat all 3 gods at once, so he goes to Pegasus for help. This would be earlier in the timeline than the first time we saw Pegasus in the filler arcs of the anime, and it isn't explained how he's made such a hasty recovery from having his eyeball ripped out, but I'm not going to complain about that. He receives 2 very helpful cards from Pegasus, but one of them turns out to be a trap. Once he plays it in his next duel with Yugi, magic stuff starts happening, and energy starts being drained from both of them with each hit, until a spirit residing within Yugi's Millennium Puzzle, I guess, has received enough energy to reawaken and takes over the duel, and he lasts for about 30 seconds, and then he's defeated, and as climaxes go, it was a pretty underwhelming one. Almost Spider-Man 3-ish, you could say. But it mostly just consisted of things that we'd already seen before. Kaiba plotting in the background to defeat one of his enemies, specifically to defeat Yugi. Kaiba dueling against Pegasus, and then Kaiba dueling against Yugi himself. But I still like the duels that we see here. They're still very interesting. I liked getting to see Kaiba finally defeat Pegasus. And when it finally comes around to Kaiba's duel with Yugi, each move they make is very careful and precise and interesting, and you can actually follow which cards they've used up from their decks, as both deck lists were posted online, not too long after the movie hit theaters. And aside from one error at the very end of the duel, you can actually see that Yugi uses every single card in his deck to win. The original cards that we got were also pretty interesting, which is unfortunate because we never get to see any of them again since the movie isn't canon in any respect. At the end of the day, it was a movie that contributed practically nothing to the continuity of the show, is entirely forgettable, but one that I still enjoyed seeing. Bonds Beyond Time is the exact opposite of that, save for that last thing. I mentioned in the previous video that Bonds Beyond Time is part of the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5D's continuity, technically speaking. In reality, it was an anniversary movie, and it shows Yusei, the protagonist from Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, using his brand of magic powers to travel through time and save both Jaden from GX and Yugi from a villain called Paradox, and the 3 of them teaming up to fight this villain from the future. Careful respect is paid to the continuity of the shows. Yugi, for example, knows absolutely nothing about synchro monsters the first time that he sees Yusei summon one. This is the other Yugi we're talking about here. But he is such a strong gamer that he's able to pick up on what they are and how they work pretty much immediately. He also makes some of the biggest plays of the duel himself, despite the fact that his cards are pretty outdated compared to the other 2 characters. And one of my favorite things about the movie is that in his first turn of the duel, Jaden gets to wreck shit. Jaden is typically considered the least impressive Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonist. Not counting the kid from Zexal, I guess, probably. But as someone who really likes Jaden, I was really excited to see that they gave him proper opportunities to shine during this duel, playing alongside probably the 2 most popular Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists. He was still allowed plenty to do. But on top of everything, this episode expanded the lore in ways that actually impacted the canon. I mentioned in the previous video that this is actually where we find out that without Pegasus, the world of 5Ds wouldn't have existed. But it tied in directly with the final arc of 5Ds, where the main characters were facing threat from the future, from characters from the future who claimed that they would be the end of the world, which, while a bit convoluted, was a very interesting plotline. So seeing it carried over into the movie gave the movie more weight. And let's not kid ourselves, it was probably the success of this movie that is actually part of the canon, that has led to the production of the new movie Dark Side of Dimensions, which directly continues the story of Yugi and his friends. Something that I have wanted since the original series ended. They may be hit and miss. Pyramid of Light specifically may be a big miss. Maybe a movie that a lot of people prefer to just forget about. But if you're a Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan, I still think it's worth a watch. And Bonds Beyond Time is a really great nostalgia romp. Getting to see the first 3 Yu-Gi-Oh! Protagonists actually play off of one another is a real treat for fans of the franchise. I can only hope that once Dark Side of Dimensions rolls out here in America, since I haven't been able to watch any version of it yet, that I feel the same way about it that I do about Bonds Beyond Time. That it is a worthwhile continuation of the story and a worthwhile contribution to the canon. Because as much potential as Bonds Beyond Time had, this movie has so much more. But the care that was put into Bonds Beyond Time, put into making it good and making it a proper love letter to the fans, has given me confidence that this next movie will turn out the same way. Once again, guys, Thank you for watching, and be sure to check out the next video where I discuss Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, the red-headed stepchild of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Franchise. But until then, just remember, the fun is just beginning.